today I read an article about that the Japanese company Mitsubishi Heavy, which is a defense firm, has had a cyber attack. Basically, what happened is that they found viruses on their servers, on more than 80 of their servers. The reason I want to talk about this is because I find the idea or what comes from cyber attacks quite scary, simply because everything we do, everything that is electronic, or most things we do, have software. The car has software in it, obviously the computer has software in it, but traffic lights have software in it, and most importantly, all the security stuff, like the Air Force, their planes, they're run by software. And if people can, or hackers can, plant viruses into a defense firm's servers, then what else can they do? And that seems like a very crazy thought to me, because software is so essential in most of of these things. Like in the air, the planes would not stay in the air if it wasn't for the software. And that's mind-boggling to me. So, there's a few ways that you can protect, or that systems can be protected from viruses. Firewalls and antivirus programs that scan the incoming data, filter out the codes that are recognized as viruses, which is what the your antivirus program, if you have one. I don't have one personally because I think they use it, but that's what the antivirus programs do. And I used to think that the only effect that a virus can have on your computer is that it corrupts some files, or it sends data over the internet, or it uses your computer as a hosted computer. But the only thing it really can do, a virus really can do, is change the software operations that your computer undertakes. Windows with, or whatever operating system you use. But the systems that stop your computer from overheating, they are also controlled by software. And recently, people have found that hackers can also infest that software, the software that controls the overheating, or that controls the turning speed of your hard disk drive. That stuff, they can modify it so that the computer essentially breaks itself. So they can modify it so that there's a crazy system load where it's calculating something completely useless, and it turns off the protection where when your components get too hot, that your computer automatically turns off, and it just bypasses that, and then it runs calculations that heat up your computer, and eventually your computer's gonna melt. Or the other thing is that it can modify the speed that your hard disk drive turns at, and suddenly your hard disk drive explodes, or the metal bits inside it shatter and fly out of it, because the virus has made it spin at some ridiculously high revs per minute. The same can happen with the DVD drive, CD drive, Blu-ray drive, whatever. And it's just so crazy what it can do. And so there's a few ways you can protect yourself, like, as I said before, the firewall, etc. But the best way to protect yourself is to have enclosed systems. Like, you have banks, I believe, operate in a similar way, where they have certain computers where only humans can enter code. It can enter data, take data away. And security systems also usually work in that way, where they aren't connected to an external network. However, what if someone breaks into the bank and implants a virus, or somehow that data, any data, has to be brought onto the computer by something, be it person, be it via a USB stick, be it via a CD, And if that piece of hardware or the guy accessing the computer puts any viruses onto the computer, suddenly you have a an infested system. So even when they call it closed systems, air quotes, it's not really closed, because a closed system would be useless. Like an absolute closed system, even people wouldn't be allowed to access it. The computer wouldn't be able to do it. It's the point of having it. So, and another thing that I heard was that they discovered that on a lot of nuclear power plant software, they found viruses that could code under specific circumstances. That could code that the cooling system is turned off, and essentially the nuclear power plant would blow up. So it's done by a virus. But what they also found in that instance was that the only power plant that would be affected were going to be certain nuclear power plants in, I want to say Iraq, but I don't think it was Iraq. But one of those Middle Eastern countries that have rivals constantly fighting. So they assumed that it was some other country that was trying to cause damage to that original country that had the virus infestation. But then, interestingly, they found that this virus had leaked to all sorts of systems. So it wasn't all sorts of systems in America. It was in systems here in Australia. That kind of. And the other crazy thing was that they could track the basis of that virus. So the basic coding of that virus without the command to the overheating of the nuclear power plant. You can download it from the internet. Anyone can go on the internet, find, I don't remember the specific name of the virus, but if you type that name into Google or whatever, you can find basic coding of that software, for which, and then you can modify it, and there's instructions online of how to do it, and distribute it yourself. And I just find it mind-boggling, that the effect that software can have on the hardware, because personally, I always thought that software and hardware were two unconnected things that were designed to work together. But, it turns out that I was wrong, and that they really are connected very intimately, which I guess you'd expect, right? In retrospect, it's a bit ridiculous to think that they could work. That if one would work, the other would work. Or, it's a bit ridiculous that I thought that software couldn't have an effect on hardware. But it certainly seems at first glance that it should, right? Because one of them is like words, and code, ones and zeros, and the other is physical metal. It's plastic. It's it's a physical thing that's affected by words.
Mission accomplished. Good work.